Now let's look at how we can create our Markdown documents and what they are. So I'm going to just share my screen over here, my RStudio screen, and here we go. So here we are in RStudio, and we have, for example, a open thing right here that's called ex16103.rmd. The .rmd means this is an R Markdown file. And as an R Markdown file, it has a bunch of things at the top, like this. These things just specify how the document will behave when it's created. And then it has this as well with knitr, KNITR, which is an R package used to format documents. Then I have things like this. I have a pound sign, a space, and then JEG 4120. COVID edition, exercise 1. And then I have 3 pound signs, a space, and then my name, 3 pound signs, space, and then the due date of the exercise. These are all formatting, or what we call formatting symbols. And when the document is created or knitted together, what happens is these things mean, for example, that 4120 will be a main header, heading 1 level, 3 pounds, 3rd level heading. Things in between double asterisks will be bold, for example. And we have lists, bullet points, look like this. We have something, then we have the blank line. After the blank line, we have a plus sign, space, and then something, plus sign, space, and something. These will become bullets. Likewise, we can have numbered lists. Something in bold, space, 1 dot, space, this, 2 dot, space, 3 dot, space. And so there's all kinds of different things you can use to format an R Markdown document. But what is an R Markdown document? Well, it's just what you see here. It's a thing with text, and in the text we have chunks. This is called a chunk right here. Chunks are R code that runs at the time that the document is created. So you can put any type of R code that you want to have run within a chunk, like we see here. Most of these are just, our chunks are just putting in graphics at the start. And we have more information. We just type the information that we want, type out explanations. And then we could have, R chunks that do things. So for example, here's an R chunk, and it assigns the value 6 to X. So when that runs, if I just run that, you'll see it in the console being run as well, X equals 6. And then in the console, X, and we have 6 there. Here's another chunk that does a bunch of additions and stuff. I can run that, and it shows me the results. So chunks can be run. Things outside of chunks are just text, or figures, or images, and stuff like that. And they're formatted like you would see in a regular type of document. Now, this is a more complex R Markdown document because it's the one I used to create the exercises. So this is exercise 1. You see it as a Word file, but this is what its Markdown text look like right here. And at the end are a bunch of questions. And those are all formatted to become a R Markdown document in Microsoft Word. So the R Markdown document is a document with text. It's a text document with special codes that you type in to format things. And once that document is created, and I'll share my screen again, it looks like this. So this is the document that was created from that markdown. So see, it's all nicely formatted, has a table of contents, things have headings or separated by headings, and we see the actual R chunks in here and the results of the R chunks, because that's actually run and then included in the output document. So let's do a simple example together, a brand new Markdown document. So I'll go back to the RStudio, and I'll say File, New File, and I'll choose Rmarkdown. And this is how you're going to be doing your answers for all of your exercises. So you make a new Rmarkdown file, and you have to give it a name. I'll call that EX1 Answers. You put your name as the author, and you leave the document here as the default. And I want to use Word, so I'll click OK. And that puts a example, basic example that you see here in the left top, Rmarkdown document. So it shows how to include a hyperlink if you need to. You put it between the two chevrons, the greater than and the less than. And it shows heading styles. So second level header, Rmarkdown. And then it shows a couple chunks here, like summary cars. And then header, include plots, showing a plot in there too. And just for fun, I can run this or knit it. So I click on the knit up here. And it asks me where to save that file and what to call it. So I'll just save it to my desktop, and I'll call it example, like so. So now it's going to knit that example into a document. And you'll see that running up here in the Rmarkdown tab beside console. So console is still here. And there it is. So it's a formatted document that includes code and results and basic text explaining those things. So I'll close that. Now, to make it your own, all you have to do is decide, okay, well, what do I want to do? Well, if it's going to be answering questions, I'm going to go back to my, let's say, my exercise. I'll go to the end of it, and I'll copy and paste the questions into there, into my Rmarkdown document as the text parts. So I'll take all these questions, Control C for copy on the keyboard, go back to my Markdown document, and the only things you don't delete, or you should never delete in here, are these things right up here. So we don't delete those things. Those are important. Then I'll just take all the other stuff that was there, and I'll just Control V for paste over it, like so. So now I have a second level heading that says that, and I'll just make that a single level heading by putting pound exercise 1 answers. I'll put a space there. And this is just text now. For example, question 1. I want to do question 1. It says, using the concatenation function, C, create a vector called X containing the following set of numbers. 10, 30, 90, 5.6, 1.7, 3.4, 3, 4, I should say. And then show the contents of that vector. So to do that, I insert a chunk. So I bring my mouse underneath question 1, and I go into my little RMD toolbar here where it says insert. And then I choose R, and it puts in an R chunk. So I'll then create code, just as if I was doing it on the console or in the script window. So I'll say, okay, I want a new vector, and I'm going to call it X. So I'll say X equals C, open and close parentheses. And then in there, I want these numbers. So I'm just going to Control copy and paste them in there. And then show the contents. Well, we know we can show contents by just typing the name of the object. So there we have it. We have our first chunk, and that's runnable. To test it, I can just click the little run button in the top right-hand corner of the chunk, like that. And it will run it in the console, so I know that it works. Then when I knit my document, so if I knit this, it'll just go and replace the previous file. And I'll see how it looks in a formatted Rmarkdown document. So here, for example, exercise 1 answers has question 1 using da-da-da. There's my X and my X. And there's the result. I can do the same for, go back here. And then you have to close your Word document if you're not completely finished with it. Because if you want to re-knit again, you want to make sure you don't have a document open or it won't allow you to knit it again. So then let's say I go to question 2 here. I'll leave a space. I think I'll put a space there as well for formatting, so I'll keep spaces. And maybe I'll put 2 spaces between questions. So here, question 2, I'll make a space underneath it, another space. And then here I'll insert my chunk. So I click on Insert, R. So make a vector Y. So Y equals concatenate, and then open and close parentheses. And then I'll just bring in these values, like so. And it says show the contents, so I'll show it. Like typing Y, I'll test it. It works in the console here, that's good, shows me the values. So I can knit that. And again, I'm just showing multiple knits here. Generally, you're not going to knit every time you make a change because it becomes somewhat of a laborious process every time if you're doing that. So here we go, and I can see number 1, there's the answer. Number 2, there's the answer. So that's good. So I can close that, and then I go back and I continue to answer questions. And so for each question, I can just insert a R chunk and then answer it, make sure it works, etc. I can also, if I want to run all chunks at the same time and see if they all work in the console window, you'll see in each chunk, there's a little, in the top right, beside run the chunk, just to the left of that, there's a run all chunks above. So in this newest chunk I made, I could just click that and it's going to run all the chunks above. And I'll see the output of all those chunks in the window, the console, the R console. So that's also a handy thing to do. And then once you're done, well, you have a Word file created that is formatted correctly with all your questions and answers. If a question requires elaboration, for example, so some questions require elaboration, let's say it said to explain. So let's say that question said, and it doesn't, but show the contents and explain the result. Well, right after you have the chunk, you can put an explanation in text. So I could say here that the concatenation function was used to create a vector of numbers. And that's what happened. And then that will show up when I knit it. Just one last knit here. And that's going to show up. And there we go. So here I have my R answer. And then outside the chunk, I type any relevant information. Like the concatenation function was used to create a vector of numbers. And so you'll end up with a formatted document. And then you hand in both the Word document, or you could, if you want to convert it to a PDF, you can. You can also directly go and knit to the different forms here. So if I, little down arrow, for example, beside knit on the right, I could choose to knit to PDF directly. And it will create a PDF file instead of the Word file. So that's fine, PDF or Word. Each will look a little different, see? So there's the PDF file. I think they look nicer. So there's the PDF file, then the Word one compared to the Word one. So using that, and it's all there the same way in a PDF. So you could knit to a PDF file or to the Word file. Either is fine. And then you hand one of those in, a Word or a PDF, and also the RMD file that has the actual code in it that's runnable, so your Rmarkdown file itself. And that's all there is to Rmarkdown. To know more about Rmarkdown, you can go to a web page. Let's find one that's here. I'll make a fresh one. And there's an Rmarkdown cheat sheet. So I say Rmarkdown. There's the definitive guide as well online. If you want to know specific things about how to do something very specific in Rmarkdown, you can go here and learn about things. So here's the definitive guide. I'll put a link to that later as well in the exercises intro part. Or you can look for Rmarkdown cheat sheet. So it's a common thing people look for it. And it's the RStudio makes a cheat sheet that can be used for knowing different things, how to do different things in Rmarkdown. So I'll also put that link as well, or it's there now, obviously, but it wasn't there when I was talking on the video. So you'll find that as well there. So it's very simple, straightforward and simple to create Markdown documents, and it's particularly useful in the context of a course where we do a lot of analysis in R to have our Markdown documents created from the code we use, so we can have that contained everywhere. And that also makes it good for you because you could always go back and modify things in the Markdown document that you might learn. If you got something wrong, you could retry it or put it in there, and you have a permanent record then of your code and results all the time. Also, if something doesn't work, it can't be included in the Markdown. So what if something isn't working in the Markdown and you can't figure it out? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You just put pound signs in front of the things that don't work out for you. So if this whole chunk isn't working and I can't make it work for some reason, I just put the pound sign, which is a comment sign in R, and I comment out those two lines, and then there wouldn't be a result, and I would know to give you 0 on that particular question. But you should always try things anyway. And if you can't get it to work, or you didn't ask myself why it wasn't working, or we didn't talk about it, or figure out what the problem was, then you'd have to do that, comment them out. And they'll still be part of your Markdown document, but you wouldn't get marked for them, obviously. Unless there was something in the comments that you did 3/4 right, and you would still get some marks for it in that case. Okay, so that's Rmarkdown, and that's how you will hand in and submit all of your assignments. Upload them both, so the Markdown document separately from the Word or PDF file.